To start, could you tell us about the other me and your character in the
It's a
film?
film that I shot in Georgia, which was an amazing experience to go to that country. I mean, the tagline is really that it's about an architect, a failed architect who loses his sight through a sort of rare eye disease. And through that experience, he starts to sort of have this sort of visual look at a sort of a potential other world, and he starts to learn more about himself and the world that he sort of lives in, and goes through a sort of a journey of self-love, I suppose, in a sort of unique and interesting way. And yeah, I play the character of Irakli, who is this sort of failed architect who's kind of unhappy in life, really. And it's a sort of, he sort of gets a chance to sort of see into a sort of parallel world of potential other decisions and sort of complex things that he had obviously gone through as a child, and the different sort of directions in which that could have gone.
You've done it all throughout your career. What was it about this particular project and character that stood out to you?
When I'm always sort of slightly seduced by the sort of obscure and the slightly weird and wonderful, and it definitely, as a script, it read really, really well. It was very exciting to read as a script. There was a sort of odd sort of poetry about it. And also I was aware that David Lynch was involved in the project, and I'm a huge fan of his work, and it seemed to sort of be too well to sort of fit it together. And yeah, it was a really interesting, unique sort of look into the journey of sort of transgender, but without sort of having that sort of at the sort of heavy browed sort of forefront of a story at all. It was a very, very playful and sort of surreal take on that sort of experience and that journey. And yeah, and to get the opportunity to work with an actress like Andrea Pejic, who I worked with, who has been through that experience
Mhm.
firsthand, and to sort of have that opportunity to sort of spend time with people who have gone through such sort of incredible things in their life, just opens your mind and your heart that bit more. So it felt like that kind of an opportunity to sort of make a film that touched on those subjects, but like, as I said, in a really sort of different way, in a really obscure and interesting way. And so I was sort of drawn to that more than anything.
As your character's battle with his eye disease worsens, he starts to see this new world, like you were just saying. For you as an actor, how did you create the space for yourself to explore that world while keeping it grounded?
Yeah, it was all imagination. It was all just kind of just being in the room and just sort of working with Giga, who was telling me maybe what I was seeing or what I was not seeing. Obviously, I wanted to make sure that I sort of, in a real, even though the film is totally surreal and and sort of outer worldly, I wanted to sort of ground the blindness in some way, and make sure that I sort of looked into how people sort of moved, and the differences that comes with losing a sense like your sight. So yeah, I sort of did a bit of work into that, and just to make sure that sort of felt somewhat real compared to the other
Yeah.
unreal world that he was sort of taking on and inhabiting. But it was fun. It was really fun with all the sort of animal heads, and a lot of that was in the room. A lot of that they sort of had all those guys wearing the masks and stuff. So I was sort of reacting to stuff that was really there anyway.
I think this film does brilliantly is it doesn't spoon feed its audiences. It challenges them to come up with their own conclusions. Why do you think we've seen less of this kind of storytelling in recent years?
I don't know if we have. I mean, I'm always very proud that the film industry continues to sort of challenge its audiences. I mean, obviously, there's a huge amount of films that don't try and do that, but there's always a sort of group of, really exciting filmmakers that are always out there sort of pushing boundaries and challenging the audience, and challenging cinema as an art form. I always feel very proud to be a part of the film industry for that reason alone, that it doesn't just sort of feel stagnant and just kind of, but yeah, of course, the sort of mainstream sort of cinema and entertainment that we sort of get is maybe sort of feeling less and less challenging. But I do genuinely feel that sort of film still has its place in sort of the art world, and being able to sort of, yeah, push buttons and open people's minds and confuse people and make people think and make people talk and discuss, and to sort of open up conversations. So yeah, this film, it definitely doesn't help you along the way. It definitely doesn't sort of drip feed you where it's going or what it's sort of about, and kind of leaves you pretty confused at the end, which is always an interesting conversation afterwards, because people are going to have a different take and an opinion on what they think it was about and what they think happened.
And you've worked on projects of all sizes. What is it about independent filmmaking that excites you as an actor and as a creative?
I'm always sort of seduced by it. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. There's a sort of camaraderie about it that I really enjoy. You're all sort of in the trenches together, and you're all sort of up against the limitations, and those limitations are really bonding in a really interesting way. You have to sort of fight for the project, and you're all in it sort of fighting for it together. There's just something very sort of raw and real about being involved in independent film, and really struggling a bit, and just not having it all at the end of your fingertips. You got to think around certain situations. Money's always an issue, time is always an issue, so you're really sort of pushing and focused, and it really just sort of sharpens everybody's attention, because it's usually a very short sprint. When you're making an independent film that isn't backed by a huge amount of money, you only have a very limited time to make the project, and so you really sort of all come together, have a very intense and exciting experience, and it's full of ups and downs, and money isn't something that's gonna, you have to sort of think creatively around some decisions and stuff, and sometimes that works for the better, and sometimes the limitations are frustrating and you don't quite get what you hope to achieve, but that's the gamble and the excitement about it for me.
Like you were saying earlier, at the core of this film is the story of self-discovery and self-love. What did you learn about yourself and your craft being a part of this project and going on this journey with your character?
I mean, you always learn a huge amount. It's hard to sort of quantify it in a sort of sentence about what you learned. I went to Georgia and I met some incredible people and had some incredible life experiences. And like I said, just spending time with Andrea and sort of opening my heart and mind up to where, what she'd been through. And, I hadn't met many transgender sort of people. I'd worked with Lana Wachowski, who was the first sort of person who'd been through that journey. And so I'm always hungry to say, and it's always the most sort of raw and real way to sort of get, if there's something that you don't understand or it's not present in your own life, it's just to spend time with people that have been through it firsthand, and really have sort of real conversations about their experiences, and it can only sort of help and enrich your own life in those ways, definitely.
Yeah. Final question for you. Besides this film, what's next for you?
I shot a movie with Katie Holmes that we did during lockdown, which was again another fiercely independent film with no money behind it at all. But it was lockdown. We were all sort of going through the pandemic, and I was really hopeful that I might find some work that sort of reflected that time whilst living in the moment. I found that a really interesting sort of way to approach it and to sort of digest it all was to sort of make a piece of art or a piece of filmmaking or tell a story, based in the time whilst living in the time at the same, in the same moment, in the same breath. So that was really exciting. Again, very short shoot, and I was able to sort of go to New York, and tell this sort of very quite gentle and sort of hopeful story, a sort of love story set within the sort of the conflicting times that the pandemic sort of brought upon everybody. I think people sort of enjoyed moments of it and then had some anxieties and sort of depression and whatever through other parts of it, and the film sort of captures that quite well, I think.